Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2 was pretty insane. And then Episode 3 happened. Ellie! Welcome back, everyone. We're here to talk about The Last of Us Episode 2 and Episode 3 from Season 2. So just a heads up, spoiler warning in effect, I will be talking about the episodes. So if you haven't watched them yet and you don't want things spoiled for you, make sure you go and watch them before you watch this video. So Episode 2 is focused on a attack that happens on Jackson, which is also interesting because in the games, I don't believe we get that. Although attacks have happened on Jackson before, and that is alluded to in the game, we actually get to see it in the show, which is pretty cool. So while Jackson is dealing with a giant storm also happening and an infected attack, we have our groups who are out on patrol. We've got Dina and Joel, and we've got Ellie and Jesse. And while the storm gets really bad, they basically have to shelter in place. And what ends up happening with Dina and Joel is that they actually run into another person who's out in this storm, Abby. And Abby, in this episode, the rest of her friends, they basically hold up in a chalet and they can see Jackson, but they're still a ways away. They're trying to convince her to go back to Seattle, and she decides to go out. And when she's out, she ends up actually running into Joel. Well, first she runs into a bunch of zombies that she has to run away from and almost gets crushed by a fence. And then she runs into Joel, who saves her life. Oh boy. And then clearly Abby sees an opportunity here. Joel and Dina don't have anywhere to go in this terrible storm, and Abby convinces them that she has some friends that are holed up in this house, in this chalet up in the mountains that's not too far away from where they are. And she says, you know, we can go back there. We have supplies, we have blankets, we'll be okay, we'll be warm, all of that good stuff. And then we can help you get back to your town, because they know that there's an assault on Jackson right now. And so what ends up happening is they go back, and of course the moment that we've all been dreading happens, and Abby kills Joel. And that's basically the end of the episode. Jackson survives the attack, but there are a lot of dead, and Ellie, Jesse, and Dina, with Joel's body, return back to Jackson. Episode 3 is kind of about the aftermath of all of this. So we see Ellie in the hospital. We see that she's haunted by the memory of watching Joel's death, which she does unfortunately witness. And she is kind of, I think, in denial of what's going on with her. She gets a visit by Gail before she leaves the hospital, and Gail basically checks in to see how she's doing. And she also asks Ellie about something that Joel mentioned in their therapy session, which was that Joel clearly had some guilt around something that had happened with Ellie, but when Gail pressed him, he just said, I saved her. And so Gail seems pretty suspicious about what that's about. But Ellie's like, I don't know what that's about. And I'm okay. I mean, I'm sad and all of that. I'm processing it. I don't think Ellie's processing it great, to be honest with you. Ellie goes back home and she finds the last sort of belongings of Joel on his bed in a box. His watch that Sarah gave him, his daughter. His gun is also in there, which Ellie takes. Of course she does. And Dina pays Ellie a visit to reveal that she actually does have information about the group that killed Joel that she didn't tell Ellie about before, because she knew that Ellie would just like crawl her way out of the hospital to get to these people. And Dina was like, we needed to wait until we were better, and then now we can go for those people, because I cared about Joel too. And so they kind of put together a plan. They're going to petition to get a group of people together to go out after Joel. So they do this. They have like a little town hall, and they put their case forward. But unfortunately, the council rejects them, and so they decide to just go out on their own. So Dina and Ellie leave Jackson to go in search of Abby and her crew to get revenge. No, as Ellie would say, justice. But we really know this is all about revenge, isn't it, Ellie? And we basically end off the episode with Ellie and Dina starting out. They get some help from Seth, and that's pretty much the episode. They also do run into a group of bodies that seem to have been taken out by someone, which we're gonna find out more about later. And a lot of this is building, I think, the relationship between Ellie and Dina, and also building some other stuff that's going to be happening for Dina that I know from the games, but I won't spoil that. So yeah, there's going to be a lot coming, and this is basically a foundational episode for things that are going to be happening later down the road. So that's basically our synopsis for the 2 episodes. That's what happens in them, our little breakdown there. But let's talk about what I thought. Let's start with episode 2, and then we're going to talk about episode 3. I was not expecting what happened in episode 2 to happen so soon. I thought we were going to actually have more time. I thought there might be 3 seasons of the show. And I mean, there might. I think there is going to be 3 seasons of the show. I think season 3 has already been approved. So I guess they're maybe going to split part 2 into 2 parts. I don't know where that break will be, but if you've played the games, then you might have a better idea for that. Like I said, I have written a lot about the games. I've watched the games, but I haven't actually played the games myself yet. Although I do really want to do that. So hopefully we'll get to that soon. I'm still grinding on Assassin's Creed Shadows, but soon. What I felt, I mean, there was dread in the pit of my stomach. And I think that is something that killed me about that moment, because it's just, you get to the moment where Joel is now in the place with Abby. They're together. Abby's crew is all here, and it's just Joel and Dina, and you know exactly what's going to happen, especially if you know the games. You know exactly what's going to happen here, and there's just nothing you can do to get away from it. I feel like it was done so well in the sense of this feeling of anxiety and helplessness. It just gave me, it's heartbreaking what happens to Joel, and they really let you feel that. I actually did a review after episode 2 that I recorded, but I couldn't put it up because I was so emotional. What's up, everyone? We're going to be getting into The Last of Us episode 2. Season 2, episode 2. The problem I had with that review was that I just cried through so much of it. It was kind of hard for my editor to cut it and make it not feel really choppy. So now that I've had a bit of space, I can breathe again. But I will say, it's still, when I think about it, it really hits me because I just feel like it was so well done. And it's horrible. It should be horrible. But I think another amazing element of episode 2 is the assault on Jackson that we get to see. And I just want to say, like, all the stuff that they built, all of the different departments that worked on this episode, the fact that they just like built Jackson, and they really built it up, I feel like, from season 1, the makeup in that episode, the set deck, the props, the fact that they actually shot in a storm. If you guys don't know, there actually was a storm happening in Whistler, BC at the time that they shot all of this, and they decided to just like use the storm. So they actually had to shoot in a storm, which adds its own levels of challenges and difficulties to your production. There's just so much more now that you have to worry about and deal with. And, you know, if the actors looked cold, it's probably because they really were very, very cold, because they were in a real storm. I just think it's so cool. And the other thing that I feel is that the effects in this show have to be so seamless because I really don't notice them. So I feel like while there are effects happening other than, you know, practical, any special effects that we have are so smooth. I just wanted to shout out the effects team because I don't usually shout it out when I don't notice anything. And I think that that is actually a testament to effects when you don't notice anything there. Although, you know, I feel like a lot of the show is also practical, like they just really do stuff, which is also why it looks so good. But the scale, everything that's happening in that episode, it just feels so big. Episode 2 is such a big episode, really. And it's interesting because, you know, I talked a little bit about the writing in episode 1 and how I felt some of it was a little bit awkward, but I do feel it's so hard because when I talk about things, I never know how people are going to interpret it. And I remember there were some people that were just talking about in the comments this idea of like, yeah, they've really like messed up like the writing on this show. And I've talked to some people who have said like, because they're changing things, they've really like messed up the writing and it's like they just don't understand the games. But I think it is important for us to remember that Neil Druckmann and Holly Gross are actually working on this show and working, you know, to write the show as well. And they did do part 2, I believe. So unlike some other video game adaptations I've seen recently, Until Dawn, I'm looking at you, this show is actually trying to bring in the people who created the games. I do think that this means that we're going to have a story that makes sense, that is cohesive, that gives us the same feelings. Because I know people are worried about just the order in Revelations and the way things are happening. But I am confident, especially with episode 2, that this team really does know what they're doing. Because I think all of the feelings that we were really meant to feel there, they just nailed 100%. And I thought the script writing in this episode was just so good. The dialogue, everything was very well done. We also have the mention of Eugene again here, and it seems like it was confirmed in this episode that Eugene was taken out by Joel because he was turning. And I just love all the little elements of Eugene being this character that we hear a lot about and has like helps a lot of characters in a way after he's no longer here and we don't see him. So I'm curious, I wonder if we are going to get a flashback with Eugene, or if Eugene will just be this character that is always mentioned but never seen, which I always think is fun in a show. Actually, it's like in My So-Called Life, this is is such a random reference, but in My So-Called Life, which is a like 90s drama show about teenagers, but in My So-Called Life, there's this character that is always mentioned and is never there and like just takes on a life of his own through the stories you hear about him, named Tino. And Eugene is kind of giving me those vibes in a really fun way. I just think it's really cool to see how actors can build up a character just from like their own tales about that person. So part of me wants to see Eugene, and then part of me is like, I don't know, is it better if Eugene, we just never see him, but we just keep hearing about him? Which we do hear about him again in episode 3 as well. But I just wanted to take a moment to shout out the actors that really made episode 2 amazing. Also the blocking of that scene, and I think the way it's shot, it's also so just well crafted overall. Bella Ramsey as Ellie, I think just really nailed it in this episode. The heartbreak that you feel with her when, see, now I am gonna get emotional because I'm thinking about it again. I'm going back to the moment when she gets there and she sees Joel in the state that he's in and he's still just clinging to life, and she asks Joel to get up. And then when Abby takes his life and just how everything goes silent and we just see Ellie screaming, it is heart-wrenching. It is gut-wrenching. When Ellie gets kicked in the gut, I felt like I felt that. It was awful. And then, of course, we have Pedro Pascal, who I gotta say, when he is shot at the beginning, he lets out a yell that was so guttural. There's something so real and so raw about his performance as Joel in this episode. And I just feel like he really understands the character so well. And I know I was even a little bit like, man, Pedro Pascal just has to play all these reluctant dad figures lately. And I felt kind of like, is he just being typecast? And like, will he be a great Joel when he was originally cast? And he has just amazed me with each performance. I feel like just topping the last one when it comes to his performance as Joel. And this was a crazy episode for him. And hopefully we still get to see more of him in flashbacks, because it was really sad to lose him. I like how he talked in the making of the episode a little bit about how, you know, when he's all messed up, he's always thinking, I'm gonna walk into a room and everyone's gonna be like, ugh. But everyone just seems so sad because everyone just loves the character of Joel so much. So yeah, heartbreaking. And I just gotta say, Kaitlyn Dever as Abby, I understand after this episode why Kaitlyn Dever was the right cast, because her acting chops are just, it's all right there, right where it needs to be. And I know a lot of people are worried about her not being maybe as physically intimidating. She's not like a big hulking figure like Abby can be at times in the games, but I think that her as Abby is still perfectly intimidating, and I think she proves it in this episode that she can be horrifying. I think the fact that she is so wrapped up in her plot for vengeance that she just loses herself in the violence, and her friends are even just repulsed kind of by this side of her that comes out, and how she's so lost in her need to take Joel out, but you know it's not going to lead to anything good. You know it's not going to resolve anything for Abby. It's just, there's something so raw about the entire scene with Abby and Joel and Ellie. And I mean, there's so many moving pieces in that scene too, because there's so many characters still in the room that you have to think about, like where they are, what they're doing, eye lines. There's a lot happening in this scene. And I just want to say, I think all of the actors really nailed it. And I want to give a little shout out as well to the actress that plays Dina, Isabela Merced, who I remember seeing in Madam Web and actually really liking her, even though Madam Web is not a good movie. But I really liked her as Anya. I felt like she actually did a great job as Anya, and I felt that she was actually one of my favorite characters in Madam Web. Not just because I also love the character, but I just felt Isabella actually tried to do something with that performance and did decent considering what she was given. And in this, she's really nailing it as Dina. She doesn't have a lot to do in episode 2. She has more to do in episode 3. But I gotta say, I really like her. And I just feel like she's such a fun, likable, ride or die character for Ellie to have. Just really a friend that's with you through and through, who clearly Ellie is also in love with, but more on that in episode 3. In episode 2, we have a lot of elements that make this work as well. It's not just the acting, it's the music, it's the ambiance, and I feel like the music is so well balanced in this, where it's just not super noticeable. You really have to think about the music to notice when it's there, because they know just how much to give us to heighten the emotions of a scene without taking away from it, and they also know when you don't need that music. And I think some people either over or underuse music in film, and I just wanted to say, the music is it's perfect. So after episode 2, I was obviously very curious to see where the show was going to take us next, and then episode 3 happened. And for episode 3, it's an episode that happened. It is the episode that I think needs to happen, is what I will say. It's kind of an aftermath episode, and it is important for us to have a breather after such a big episode like episode 2. And also, goodness, how much of the budget went into episode 2? Probably an insane amount. They had to do so many crazy things in episode 2. So this is a kind of time for us to take things down a little bit and reflect. That's what episode 3 is all about. It's about Ellie processing kind of her grief. It's about Ellie kind of being in denial with, I think, the fact that she really does want vengeance. She calls it justice in the meeting when she stands up, but I don't think she's fooling anyone. I think she is mad, she wants revenge, and she's about to find out the price of what that will be when she sets out on her journey, which we're just starting on episode 3. There's so many places we're gonna go. So I don't mind that this was a bit of a, like, kind of chiller episode where a little bit less is happening. But at the same time, I do have to compare it to episode 2, and because episode 2 just happened and it is a lot less hype. But it was still very compelling. The emotional moments and the characters and what's going on with them is still really interesting. Tommy is also processing a lot. You know, Dina and Ellie are getting closer together. So there's still some really interesting relationships that we're exploring here. And even our, like, supporting characters, like the character of Seth and the character of Gail, are so interesting. And like I said, I really do feel like with Seth, I know I said this before and people were like, Amanda, did you miss the slur that Seth said? And I'm like, I just think the thing with Seth, though, is that he's not like a black and white character. He's not just like homophobic for the sake of being homophobic or anything like that. There's a lot going on with that character. And I love how in the town hall, he's the guy that's just like, we can't let these people get away with this. Like, you guys want to talk about how, like, everyone's like a victim, and it's like, no, like, these people came and they took something from us and they should be punished. That's how it goes. He's such a hard character and sometimes a villain, but also in this regard, he also helps Ellie and Dina in their mission to go after Joel's killers and helps them with supplies to get her to the town and all of that stuff. Is kind of a nice little redemption moment for Seth as well. Gail as well is an interesting character. She is, I think, being used a little too obviously, but I do like her just as a character. And I mean, obviously, if we have, you know, Catherine O'Hara, I feel like, yeah, I'm not gonna complain about that. I just love Catherine O'Hara and everything. I feel like she's just an amazing, phenomenal actress and just a true Canadian legend, to be honest with you. So I love her as Gail, but I do wish that they were giving her a little bit more. I feel like she's just playing the therapist for the sake of us getting information on where characters are at so that we can understand their journeys of self-discovery and their emotional journeys that they're on. And I wish that they just gave her more, because I love that she's a therapist that has no one that she can talk to. So she's basically now, she's just an alcoholic, and that she, you know, clearly has her own stuff going on and is clearly also a smart character who's picking up on things. And I don't even know if we're even going to get more of her after this episode, but I hope there's more to that character than just her being everybody's therapist all the time. I love the stuff with Ellie coming home, her seeing Joel's shirts and just breaking down, crying. It was hard to watch. It was really upsetting, honestly. Her seeing Joel's little box of personal effects and taking Joel's gun. Oof. You can just see all the framework they're setting up for what's to come. And that's what this episode is really about. It's about building up the relationship between Dina and Ellie. It's about building up some things for both of those characters with each other, but also on their own journeys that they're on. And yeah, we're setting off on this revenge mission, and we will see where it takes us. And I'm sure it's going to take us to a lot of dark places based on what I know of the game. But the one thing that I do feel that I am missing is that while I am intrigued by Ellie's journey, where she's clearly in denial and she's going to have to come to realize some things about herself, probably not soon enough, unfortunately, I do miss Joel. And I was kind of hoping that we were going to get a little bit more of Joel. So I'm hoping we're going to get some more flashbacks, because I think that'll also really deepen our connection to what Ellie is going through, understanding her loss. I feel like we do understand it still in this episode, but I can't wait to have those moments when we get to see stuff that Ellie is remembering that really powers her to continue down this path, even though it is destructive. even though there is going to be such high costs for her. Because I really feel like we have to feel that fact that this is not something that Ellie can just quit. She can't just give up because it's not within her. We talk about how things aren't resolved with her and Joel and how she never really got to resolve the beef between them before he passed. Gail brings that up, but we don't really get to see it. It's just more acknowledged, so I'm hoping that we get more of the feelings of that as we go through. Overall, I would give episode 2 a 5 out of 5. It was an amazing episode. I have no notes for it, and I was just blown away by it. Episode 3 is a bit slower, and I think, now keep in mind, this is a rating for just a Last of Us episode. This is not necessarily compared to other television. Right now I'm kind of more comparing the show to itself, but I would give episode 3 a 3 out of 5 just because I feel like there was some stuff that was a bit obvious with it in terms of the storytelling, and I did feel emotional connection to it, but there's just a little bit less happening. Now, granted, I think it serves the story overall, so that's me judging the episode as it is by itself, but I think overall it is going to strengthen our overarching story. But we'll see. Hopefully, episode 4 is even better than episode 3, and things just keep getting better and better from here on out. We'll have to wait and see. Downtime, though, in a show, it can be necessary. That's all I have for this one. Let me know your thoughts on The Last of Us episode 2 and episode 3 down in the comments below. I will see you there. And if you missed it, friends, I have been talking about The Last of Us since episode 1. Check out my episode 1 review here. I'll see you next time. And until then, stay nerdy.